Thank you very much for that introduction. I'm a retired journey person carpenter, so I just work on my own house. I'm here today to talk about a project that I was involved in from 2008 to 2011 when I was working at the university at the Collaborative for Advanced Landscape Planning. And I have to say that I'm only one of two people who were supposed to be presenting this today. Gordon Kutuk, if I can get this, there we go. Gordon Kutuk was the community coordinator who worked with us on this project. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it this week. So you're going to have to live with me, and I apologize in advance for not bringing as much of the community perspective as Gordon would have. The project that we worked on was funded actually by GEOID. We actually had 8 years of funding. The last 3 years working, Clyde River was one of the projects we worked on. And it really was a partnership between ETAC, Natural Resources Canada, who were up in Clyde River doing a lot of the kind of mapping work that we've seen from some of the technical presentations over the last day or so, as well as the Collaborative for Advanced Landscape Planning at UBC. And just quickly to talk a bit about ETAC, for those of you who don't know, ETAC is a community-led initiative, and it provides research services for research projects coming into the community. So provides everything from local researchers, translators, organizing community events. And this was how we connected with Gordon, was through ETAC. He was the coordinator at that time, and he was the community coordinator on our project. So if you ever have a chance to work in Clyde River, it's absolutely a joy to work with ETAC in the community. And the Collaborative for Advanced Landscape Planning at UBC had a whole number of team members as well working on the project, from researchers, landscape architects, as well as students. And some of the images that you're going to see today, in particular, were made by Gia down in the middle there when she was a landscape architecture master's student. We were working on a project that was looking at new processes and tools to help bring climate change into community planning. We called it Local Climate Change Visioning. We used 3D and 4D visualizations, 4D meaning over time, so looking out into the future. It was based really on spatial mapping in a lot of ways, and also on participatory processes, going in and working with communities, bringing communities and stakeholders and experts together, often to map various issues. Permafrost is just one of them, and really try to look at how to plan around climate change. We had a number of projects all across Canada. And here the critical components really were the participatory components of it, aspects of it, building scenarios and looking out to the future. So looking in the future, different options for community planning in the future. Integrating data, and Trevor has mentioned that as well, and I would say data is always one of the biggest challenges on a project, actually getting data. And in fact, on this project, I think we were a bit ahead of the data that was coming, so it's been very exciting over the last day to see all of the wonderful data that's coming forward now for communities that is not always readily available to communities, and definitely has not been in the past. And then using visualizations to communicate what we're talking about. So here's a bit from the Clyde River project. It's quite extensive, so I'm just sharing a few bits with you today. This was one of the early 3D visualizations that we did of the town. And we had a number of trips up there, and one of the trips coincided with the end of the NRCan research project, when they were running an open house and sharing their research results with the community. And so we went up as well and ran some workshops, both with community members and the NRCan scientists, and sat down, or in this case, kneeled down with the community members around an aerial photo of the community and started to talk about issues in the community. And Trevor has outlined the kinds of issues that come up when you go into communities and ask about issues, and you say, we're coming in and we want to do climate change research. And people say, we really care about housing. And we really care about the fact that it's hard for our kids to walk to school in the winter when it's really cold, because not everybody has ATVs or snowmobiles. And we're concerned about our reliance on the diesel oil that's coming in every summer in the summer sea lift. So we got all of those kinds of issues. And we were deliberately running what's called, in social sciences, transdisciplinary action research, where you can change the research questions based on feedback from the community. So we actually changed what we were working on and said, okay, we're working on housing, quality of life, and energy issues. as well as landscape hazards. So this is the map that was drawn with the community members with a whole number of issues on it. There's actually drawings all off to the side looking at housing and that kind of thing. We digitized the landscape hazards piece of this. So community members themselves were able to identify a number of stable areas as well as some of the areas where there are current drainage issues in the community. And then sat down as well with NRCan scientists and did a similar process. This one focused mainly on the landscape hazards and the research findings that they were coming up with. There were also some community members present at this meeting. And out of that came up with a composite map, sort of put all that information together, looking at some of the unstable areas, areas with poor drainage, hot spots for where the culverts were not matched to the kind of drainage that was coming down now, some of the stable areas, and also some suggestions for adaptation actions that could be taken. So community members were suggesting snow fencing, for example, as one of them. So then we came back from the meetings with the community and started to think about what does this mean for the future of Clyde River and planning for growth. It is a community that has significant population growth and is, as Trevor had mentioned, very underhoused at this point. And we thought about what kind of scenarios could we develop for the community that would address all of these issues. So I'm going to walk through a series of visualizations of the community that helps to show how we thought about those issues. So this is a 3D image of Clyde River right now. Looking up towards the water supply. And this is the surveyed plan. So I think it's important to remember that many communities that we're working in have community plans already. This one, I think, was about 15 years old at the time, but it had been surveyed already. So the community had a plan for expansion. And when that plan was done, the hazard mapping that was provided by the community and NRCan scientists didn't exist. But when we overlaid that on the plan, you can see that one of the subdivision areas was in one of the areas that had been identified as unstable with some really significant drainage issues. And so we said, well, maybe the plan could shift and we could add a bit more density into the other subdivision instead and still accommodate growth. Then we thought about what the community said about quality of life and walkability. The circle here actually shows about a 5-minute walk from around the school. So the school is right in the heart of the community. And you could see that, it's hard to see on this, but this is actually a pretty good slope on a hill, and there's a good wind that comes down that hill. I was there in July and it was cold, so I can't imagine what it would be like for kids walking this in the winter. And so community members, we were thinking, well, what are our options? Do we need to go up that hill? Maybe instead, the old trailers and Nunavut housing could be replaced by multiplex down stay in a dense compact core where everything is close to the school. And then we also thought about energy independence. Would it be possible to get really dense housing down there, get a district energy system, and maybe add some wind into their microgrid? So we took all of these pictures, and we had a lot more visualizations, close-up visualizations of what this would look like, back to the community and met with housing, Hamlet Council, elders, other community members. We also met with some folks in Iqaluit as well, and asked questions about what did you like best, and what works and what doesn't work for this. What would you do differently? And we heard a lot back. We heard that community members really don't like multifamily housing as it's currently built. It's very noisy, it's not sound separated. People like to have their own place. The government, on the other hand, likes to build multifamily housing. It's cheaper and it's more energy efficient, so it costs less to run. People said that there wasn't enough room for storage for all of their outdoor things. And that was some of the feedback that we got on the scenarios. So we went away and we came up with 2 final scenarios to say, okay, this is how we think the community could develop based on all those factors again and integrating them. So this is now looking north, and you can see down here the diesel plant in the community. And actually, they've already run part of their energy infrastructure up in anticipation, again, of that move up the hill with expansion. And we said, you could do that. You could do an upper town development. It's actually a mix of We were proposing a mix of sort of row houses, some passive solar, as well as multifamily and some single family in there. And the other option that you could do would be, again, to go to the higher density here and where you've got this infrastructure, replacing Nunavut Housing Corporation old trailers with larger homes. We proposed a multifamily that actually would have some common areas for skinning and sewing as well, so would meet some of the needs of the community. And I'll just show you another view looking down from the hill, so you can see the school down there. So this would be the upper town scenario. And this is a full build out, so this would be by about 2050. Or the compact community that could run on district energy. So we looked at a number of scenarios and drivers, and I don't have time to go through all of them, but I'm just going to share a couple. So in terms of landscape hazards, we said yes, avoids the known hazards, but there's really a question about ground ice still, so we did not have good enough data to be making some detailed decisions. That would be really important before you set a plan like this in motion. And I wanted to share this draft, which came actually from Melanie Irvine at Memorial University, kind of late in our process when she had gotten through a lot of her work, which is a composite hazard map for the community. And I just want to show this and the next couple of images because I think it's important to remember that community planning is done well out ahead of construction. So community plan may have been set 15 years earlier, and then you have a hazard map that shows areas where there's significant drainage, but you go back to the community as we did and you find that they're building the new multifamily homes right in the drainage channels. So I think there's some challenges once you have the mapping to make sure that it is getting into the hands of the right people. And these are really complex decisions that are made with many trade-offs, as Trevor was saying, complex decisions across many different government departments as well. So I think what we found from this was, you know, not only parachuting in as university researchers makes it difficult to have those ongoing relationships, but as well do need to think about how to integrate these into long-term processes. We looked at town planning as well, so we did want to look at what was happening in Clyde River with the population. In fact, the Hamlet Council had asked us to do that, so we looked at various population projections. The population is projected to probably almost double by 2050 in that community, and it is a community where very few people move away, actually. They tend to stay, and currently totally underhoused. When we were doing this, there were almost 1,000 people, but only what we called pillow spaces, because people were actually sleeping in shifts in the community. It's only about 800 available pillow spaces, and people were sleeping in shifts. So we looked at with the build-out, Upper Town could accommodate all of the future growth. The Lower Town scenario could accommodate a lot of it, and then as the community continues to grow, we'd need to find another solution. We also looked, again, at walkability and quality of life, and just show you those visualizations again. Here's the school with the community where many of those homes would be up the hill. And this did raise an issue around whether we should just be doing residential subdivisions or building more social spaces into the new parts of communities as well. And this is the Lower Town scenario, and you actually can't see, there's nothing up the hill in that one because everybody's actually concentrated over here. And we had visualizations to show what that could look like as well. And again, we went back and asked people about the acceptability of those options. So this is the main street in Clyde River as it is now and as it could be with a lot of multifamily housing. And we had a mixed response this time. People understood that it made sense for seniors, for example, and elders to live close to their services, but a lot of people still didn't want to live in that kind of multifamily units. They wanted the open space and the views that they're used to having in Clyde River. And we did a comparison across all of them. I haven't shown you some of the other ones, the housing types, as well as some of the energy. But there are significant decisions around energy security and energy independence that come also depending on what kind of land use planning you're doing, whether you're doing compact development or more spread out development as well. So we brought all those back to the community. Some of the posters are on the wall here, and all of those posters are up in Clyde River that went back to the community. And that's it for me today. Thank you.
We have time for a question or two. No questions from the floor. Any questions from the...
Hey, Ellen, it's Ben Lineker with ENR. I was just wondering if you found that these really fancy-looking 3D models and stuff like that, that actually affected how people thought of the projects and maybe made a more favorable sell of the ideas that you were presenting?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and we did do research over 8 years in a variety of communities looking at visualizations and how well they work, and we found that in general they do help people understand the issues. There's lots of caveats to go along with them. You have to be very careful not to oversell one option and undersell other options. For example, you know, some of the folks at the government of Nunavut that we met with were like, help us sell multifamily. And I think it's very interesting that when we walk through the reasons to have multifamily, people could start to understand that. But even if we made them look really, really great, there's still going to be people who, it's a very big change to move into multifamily housing for a lot of people. So that there was less comfort level with that. I would say a couple of the other research projects we've done, one of them we actually measured got people to rank visualizations. In that case, we were using Google Earth. We had a whole community in Google Earth, along with wildfire risk and those kinds of things. It was a 3D community, and you could do flyovers in the community and look at it. And we also had posters on the wall, and what we found was a totally bimodal split. So a complete split in the respondents. Some people ranked Google Earth number one, and some people ranked the posters number 1 and Google Earth number 4. So, you know, again, I think that various media are really important to reach different audiences, and there's going to be various people that appreciate different kinds. But in general, and particularly walking into a community like Clyde River, where everything is done in translation, when you can put pictures up and people can actually see what you're talking about, it does make it a lot easier to talk to. If you show somebody a land use plan with the colors, I haven't shown them here, but if you show somebody a land use plan, it's very hard to understand what that means just when you see an orange multifamily district. You don't know what that means, so when you show the picture, it's a lot easier to talk about it.
If there's time for one more question. I'm Jesse Ajay with the government of Nunavut. How much resistance did you face from the Hamlet or the GN for encouraging people to rethink the subdivisions, considering that they had already been surveyed, which is extremely expensive?
Yeah, it is very expensive. Somebody has to come out to the community. That's a really good question. We met with community services in Iqaluit. The surveys were done, I think, originally when they were still thinking single-family houses, and now the government has really moved to multifamily, is my understanding, for the most part. That's all that was going in when we were up there. So I would say it's a complex issue. I don't think we didn't encounter a lot of resistance to talking about these issues and to trying to think them through. At the Hamlet Council level, when we met with folks at Iqaluit and Government of Nunavut as well, we didn't encounter a lot of resistance. I would say, though, that we were university researchers coming in to do an experimental pilot project. So it wasn't quite the same thing as coming in and saying, okay, now let's sit down and redo these plans. But the plans are pretty old for Clyde River. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Ellen.